Well, hello everybody. This is session 14. Can you believe it? And again, we're looking at our textbook. And the topic for today is problems with written language. Now, writing is a very complex task, a skill that students must learn. And students usually who have learning difficulties are very poor in achieving this to proficiency. Now, there's two main skills in writing. The first is the knowledge of spelling and grammar, and also the ability to handwrite or use a word processor. And the other task is the ability to come up with a story, that higher order thinking, where you have to plan, you have to put a plot in, or if you're doing a summary, you have to know how to do a summary. And there is a lot of editing and drafting and rewriting, and that's a higher order skill. Of course, students with learning difficulties will find this task challenging. Now, when the children are younger, they are taught two ways of writing. One will be the traditional way of writing, where the teacher will give the children a topic, and say they've just come back from holidays. It may be the Easter holiday, and the children have to come up with a story that explains what they did on the Easter holiday, and they will then tell that story to their teacher. Now, that's a traditional way. The other one is the process approach, where there are various strategies that we use where there's not too much emphasis on structure or sentences or full stops or capital letters, where we're looking at skills such as higher order thinking. And the problem with this approach is that if the child is not confident in either the spelling or the grammar or thinking, they will have a sense of avoidance. They won't want to write. And of course, like any skill, if you don't do it, you're not going to get better at it. And if you don't do it, you're going to lose your confidence, lose your motivation, and then you're going to feel quite unsuccessful. Now, the traditional approach, where the teacher gives a story and may say, and there's 3 paragraphs, there's an introduction, there's the main body, and there's a conclusion, and I want you to write a few sentences of these 3 parts. The teacher may give an introductory part on Saturday, trying to put the story into a time frame. And then the next part of the body of it might be, we went to the Easter show. And of course, at the end of it, it might be, and we played with the toys that we were able to buy at the show, and that will be expanded into a story. Now, with the process approach, we try and teach the children that we can write a story, and we would give them a whole story, and the support teacher would then give the children feedback along the way, and the teacher would have to have a conference with every single student and look at mini lessons as to, so what with all the children in the class seems to be the difficulty? Are the children having difficulties with coming up with ideas, or are they having troubles with staying in sequence? Are they having difficulties with grammar? And then the teacher will give mini lessons. When a child is failing in the traditional approach or failing the process approach, there has to be some intervention. And if we look at intervention, it goes back to the model of effective instruction. Now, effective instruction is modeling by the teacher, giving guided practice and feedback, independent practice, and then application. Let me give you an example. So the Year 1 teacher is teaching a lesson on sentences. And she will say, a good sentence has a noun, that is a person, place or thing, and tells more. It starts with a capital letter and finishes with a full stop. Now she may rehearse that skill with the children so they will remember a good sentence has a noun, person, place or thing, and tells more. It starts with a capital letter and finishes with a full stop. And they'll rehearse and rehearse that. She will start them off and say a good sentence, and they will complete the answer. And then she'll give an example. So the example might be, the cat is black. And she'll ask the children, what's the noun? And they'll all say cat. And then she'll say, what tells more? Is black. Does it have a capital? Does it have a full stop? Yes. And the children will be taught that skill of how to produce a good sentence. Of course, a story is more than just one sentence. It's a sequence of sentences. And there are lots of little strategies that we can use to increase the sentence building for our students with difficulties. However, there is the issue that as the children get older, they lose interest in writing. And so writing needs to be purposeful. It needs to say something. But if the children have been having difficulties with writing for a long time, us as support teachers have to change what we're doing. I think we've got to give time every day to the writing process. And I just don't mean 5 minutes. We're going to have to allocate at least half an hour to an hour every day. The atmosphere that we have writing has got to be encouraging. We can't allow any negative talk. We've got to be positive and uplifting, and the children have got to see that they really want to do this activity. We've got to give a structure for writing. We have to give a whole story, what we expect, for the children then to analyse what does a good story have. Just like when I explained what a good sentence has, then we have to teach the children by repetition, what does a good story have? Now there's some other ways we can do this because some of our children don't have very good memory skills, and that is to do paired writing. Just like we did paired reading, we can do paired writing. Now paired writing is that obviously the student will be the student and there'll be a helper. Now that helper can be a teacher, teacher's aide, it can be a university student, can be a parent, but it's where one person will keep on asking questions of the student so they can elaborate and make that story fit the plan that we've actually asked the children to remember. Now, another thing we can do is give the children some STEM sentences. So, on Friday, and then they fill out the blanks. We got in the car and they fill in the blanks. That sort of a skeleton story helps the children to get started. It's a little bit like when we're learning to drive. We start a little bit of the skill and then we get to do the rest of the skill. So the driving instructor may give us a little bit of a help and then we've got to complete it. Now, those of us who know about forward chaining and backward chaining, that is just one of the skills that we use in special education. Of course, another way of encouraging students to write is to use a patterned story and follow the pattern that has been written by the author. I'll give you an example. So the story might be three little pigs. And the children know the story of the three little pigs. So they don't have to think about what the structure is going to be because they know the story. All they've got to do is maybe change the nouns. So instead of the three little pigs, the wolf and the three little pigs, it might be the giant and the three little chickens. And so they can make up a story that has a very similar sequence, but they can be imaginative in the nouns that they choose. Another strategy we can use is sentence combining. So when the children have written two sentences and you've taught them to write two good sentences, you can then combine those sentences together. An example, The giant is hungry. The meat pie is juicy. And when you combine those two together, you could say the hungry giant ate the juicy meat pie. And then the children can see that the use of the word and is joining two ideas together. The other one is story planner. It's a little bit like doing a web you can put on the board, or the instruction if you're using a smart board, a bit like brainstorming. So together, just more than just one or two people, maybe the whole class gets together to make up a combined story together. And that way, what might have started off as the hungry giant, then the story will be expanded. It will have a plot. It will have maybe a moral to it and a finishing part to it. Another idea is called the expanding idea, where you make one sentence and then you add two more sentences as you go. So the sentences that the text uses is about car parking. The school needs more car parking. That could be the sentence that starts. There are many cars that are parked on the road. There's a big lineup of traffic coming into the school. And so you keep on adding 2 or 3 or 4 sentences until you make up a story. Of course, as the children get older, we're going to need to teach them summary skills and study skills. And this is a skill that has to be taught. We have to give the students some factual material and teach them how to summarize. Now, we can do that by using highlighter pens. We can do that by ourselves reading through the story and then making true and false statements. And then the children will pick out what the true statements are, and that will be part of their summary. Or we can use sentence starters, or we can use like closed passages. We can get ourselves as support teachers, write a summary and then leave out gaps for the children to fill in. And of course, multiple choice is always a good summary as well. Whatever we do with reading and written work, there's a strong correlation. If the children are having reading difficulties, they're probably having written language difficulties. If they're having written language difficulties, they're probably not reading very much. And I would encourage us, as we keep on talking about written language, the children will remember sequences and vocabulary if they are reading. We have to model reading. We've got to give time in the day for reading and writing. We as support teachers have to be passionate about it, but there's got to be a purpose for reading. And depending upon the age of the student, we're going to have to use resources that they are going to see actually have purpose. So as the children embark upon this written language, can I encourage you to don't let them talk you into avoiding doing the task. As they get older, they like to manipulate and they like to do less when they probably should be doing more. We only have such a short time at school to get these basics into the children. They need to be very confident as readers and writers. And we don't want them to leave school saying, oh, I'm not very good at reading and writing. We want them to have a confidence where they see themselves as good readers and good writers. And that only happens with practice. I'll give you the example when we are learning to drive a car. If we just learned to drive a car and left the car in the garage and never used it, we would never then be able to improve our driving, would we? And so with more practice at reading and writing, the children are going to become more confident and they're going to enjoy it. And remembering this, the children themselves will be parents one day. and they will instill in their own children the love or not love of reading. It happens so quickly. Life goes by so quickly. And I want you to think just how important it is that reading and writing are practiced every single day. And since we have about 200 school days in a year, that's a lot of reading and writing to do. And now I'll hand over to your facilitator, who will go through the workbook with you. And I'll see you in the next session.